Welcome to this G-Theory presentation. This is the first of a series of presentations intended to provide an understanding of the musical construct known as a major scale. Since G-Theory is a generative theory of music, we usually like to approach musical structures, such as the major scale, from the ground up, beginning with the most basic, fundamental elements, and then coming to an understanding of how these primary elements combine and interact to form more complex structures and relationships. However, in this series, we'll be using a slightly different approach. I chose to do it this way because many of my students feel that they would like to solidify their understanding of what a major scale is before delving into the deeper theory of why it is. So, we'll divide the series into two main sections. In the first group of videos, we'll talk about the major scale more from the standpoint of conventional music theory. We'll cover the basic structure of the major scale, how it is used in melodies, note names, including natural notes, sharps, and flats, key signatures, and transposing to different keys. Then, in part 2, we'll approach the scale from a generative point of view. We'll explore the generative source of the major scale. Where does it come from? Why does it have the structure that it does? These are the questions that I find fascinating, and I hope you will too. We'll get to those in part 2, but first, let's talk about the structure of a major scale. To help visualize the major scale, we'll be using the metaphor of a ladder. We'll call this the major scale ladder. There are a few things worth noting about it. For instance, it has 8 rungs. Each rung on the ladder corresponds to a note in the scale. We can label them 1 through 8. These are called scale degrees. So, beginning with scale degree 1, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Also, the ladder has a certain height. The height of this ladder represents the musical distance or interval known as an octave. To get the feel for the span of an octave, you can think of the first 2 notes of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. The distance between some and where is 1 octave, and that is how tall our ladder is. Furthermore, as I'm sure you've noticed, this is a very strange looking ladder. You probably won't find one like this in real life. The rungs are not evenly spaced. That's because the smaller intervals that separate the degrees of the scale come in 2 sizes, whole steps and half steps. A major scale has a half step between scale degrees 3 and 4 and another between 7 and 8. All other adjacent notes are separated by a whole step. Some musicians like to think of this pattern as whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. I prefer to just remember 3, 4, and 7, 8 are where the half steps occur. However you choose to think about it, the important thing to know is that every major scale has this exact same pattern. There are other types of scales that have different patterns, but every major scale has this particular structure. To illustrate this, let's play some major scales on a couple of familiar instruments. Guitar works well, especially if we lay the scale out linearly along one string, so we can clearly see its structure. We could start on any fret on any string of the guitar. All we need to know is that a difference of 2 frets is a whole step, and a difference of 1 fret is a half step. For example, let's start on string 1, fret 3. Now we're just going to count up the degrees of the scale, remembering to put whole steps everywhere except between 3 and 4 and 7, 8. Each note is like a rung on the ladder. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice the half step between 3 and 4. 5, 6, 7, 8. There's the other half step between 7 and 8. And we could come back down. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That is a major scale. Let's build a different one. This time we'll start on string 2, fret 1. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We could build a major scale starting from any random note just by knowing the pattern. And we don't even need to know the names of the notes we're playing. As long as you can count to 8 and put the half steps in the right places, you can construct a major scale. The same thing works on the piano or keyboard, except instead of frets, we're dealing with keys. Regardless of the color of the key, black or white, movement by one key is a half step, and movement by two keys is a whole step. Let's pick a random piano key and make a major scale based on it. How about this one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here's another. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, no need to even know what these notes are called or how they're written. Just following the pattern ensures that we'll end up with a major scale. What I hope was apparent in these examples is that although we started all of these scales on different notes, they all had the exact same relative structure. That is, they all conformed to the pattern of whole steps and half steps illustrated by our major scale ladder. So, we found that a major scale spans the interval of one octave and consists of 8 notes separated by whole steps and half steps, such that the half steps occur between scale degrees 3, 4, and 7, 8. But wait a second. Why are there two kinds of steps, half steps and whole steps? Where do these distances even come from in the first place? And why are they arranged in this particular order? In other words, how is the major scale generated? What is the logic behind all of this? These questions will be addressed in the second group of presentations. In the next session of this first set, we'll see some examples of how a major scale is used in the construction of melodies. I hope to see you there. Guitar works well, especially if we lay the scale out linearly along one string, etc., etc. Now I have the guitar.
Okay, so do you want to pick it up?
Yep.
Go ahead.